So, I mean, you were a Defense Department staffer during the Obama administration.
Yeah.
I'm really curious to get your take on this current moment, because I think on this show, at least, I've been pretty aggressive, trying, maybe tediously so, trying to sound the alarm about how this bipartisan consensus in China hawkery is building with every year. It concerns me deeply, and you have experience with this kind of mindset, having worked in the Defense Department. So, what's your assessment of this current moment of anti-China hawkery, as I say, that really has been pushed, unfortunately, by the Biden administration as a centerpiece of their foreign policy?
Yeah, it's unfortunate. There's this false notion that is just everywhere, saturating Washington, that like China, the threat of China is a sense of unity, and therefore, if you can outbid people on how much of a threat China is and basically inflate it, you're just inflating national unity, man.
Mm.
Um, and obviously, that's going to end in no good way. Like that's going to be tragic for all of us except for some oligarchs. And so the process that democratic politics are trapped in right now, like Democratic Party politics, is that they can't be seen, which is very Cold War-esque. They can't be seen as weak on national security. National security is basically all things big red menace, right? All things China threat. And the really pernicious aspect of this, aside from aping the Cold War in a kind of farcical way, is that now we are doing this process of things that would be good: industrial policy, right? Inflation Reduction Act, chips and like trying to restore domestic manufacturing. We got all this green energy investment stuff that 5 years ago would have seemed impossible, and Biden deserves some credit for that. Unfortunately, it's the larger geopolitical context that's making that politically possible. Why do you think somebody like Joe Manchin goes along with these large spending bills? A little bit of it is maybe like rent seeking or side payments, but a lot of it has to do with China. It's still all of this domestic economic stuff is anchored on the China threat. And so the Democrats are locked in to this, succumbing to the rivalry impulse that the MAGA right and the far right uses to avoid accountability for basically being fascists at this point. Like they're
Hmm.
post-liberal, post-democratic, and China is what allows that to happen. China is what allows them to focus energy on, banning TikTok instead of dealing with the climate crisis or dealing with like a higher minimum wage. No time for that. We got China trying to buy our land.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
big threat.
it's
Big
just
threat.
deeply depressing that the Biden administration seemingly, and by the way, Schumer has been pushing this for years, but the CHIPS Act seemingly
Yeah.
felt that they could not pass a domestic agenda where we onshore some of our the production of necessary goods, which like was laid bare during the pandemic because of our
Yeah.
convoluted supply chain process. It's really unfortunate that they felt that they could not pass that kind of domestic agenda without making it, framing it within the context of China's so bad. Because one, I mean, and we'll get into the implications for U.S. foreign policy and militarism, but just here domestically, it's just bound to hurt Chinese Americans, Asian Americans, and their standing here in the United States.
Totally. That's actively happening too. Yeah. So there is this problem of like you're wedding the American economy to these forces of militarism, right? And those forces of militarism in the like Spencer Ackerman sense, bring the war home, Kathleen Belew, it's you're creating you're feeding the forces of violence in American society by anchoring its economy to militarism in the big meta sense. But in the real foreign policy war stance, right? What the Democrats have committed to is American global primacy, which is not so different from past presidents, right? It's not so different. That is what Trump articulated. His strategy document said specifically. The Obama administration that I worked in articulated this 100%, right? This is not new to say that America seeks to retain global primacy. What's new is that our ability to sustain that standard of global domination, which is most important in Asia and most under challenge in Asia, is just eroding. And it's eroding partly because of like our own policies, but the process of trying to seek to retain primacy is totally at odds with what preserving peace requires in Asia. So we've had this unique period of 44 years, the Asian peace, where the region has not had new interstate wars. And the book talks about like, well, why is that? And America is part of the reason, but also part of the threat to the Asian peace. And what I'm trying to say right now is that like in our current moment, pursuing primacy directly undermines the sources of peace. And so like we're feeding forces of war in order to win politics at home, in order to get domestic reshoring and IRA and stuff like that. And that's a bad bargain.
Yeah, absolutely. And I, we'll get into the history here in a sec, but I have one more question for you, a kind of larger umbrella one. How much of this is just rebranded Red Scare politics? Like this is just all of the mechanisms in the United States for Cold War, Red Scare, anti-communist nationalism and militarism are still there. They never maybe they were a little more dormant in certain sectors of our government, but they're all seemingly getting activated in a newer form in this current moment.
Yeah, 100%. That's one of my major concerns apart from, great power war, nuclear war. It's the renewal of Red Scare politics. So like in the early Cold War, the conservative movement had trouble getting traction basically in the New Deal order. Like it was not politically popular until they were able to seize on anti-communism. And
Hmm.
so we think about McCarthy, but McCarthy was just one node in the larger network, and his star burned out pretty quickly anyway. But Red Scare politics became like the defining flavor of the Cold War, and that purged from government service socialists, social democrats, queers, certain minorities, right? If you had a hyphen, if you were a hyphenated American, you fell under accusations of disloyalty, claims of fifth columnist because you wanted, a better welfare state. All the like Red Scare politics fought all that stuff, and it was just successful for the conservative movement. And they're doing it again because it kind of works,
Hmm.
unless we call them on their bullshit.
Well, another instance, frankly, of the Democratic Party just more easily feeding into right-wing framing than the left would like, and what is good for the country in general.